Hey, security pros! Welcome to another episode of Security Pro Insights, where we believe Monday is the best day of the week. Fresh starts mean fresh opportunities. Put last week behind you and take the next step to where you wish to be. One of the top stories in media today is the mass closures of brick and mortar retail. Unfortunately, my LinkedIn feed is filled with scores of professionals that have lost their jobs. The loss prevention space has been heavily affected. Today's guest is highly experienced in the loss prevention space and has a natural gift as a writer, teacher, and a coach. He bravely gave up the security of working for organizations to pursue his passion of helping others find success and landing their next career opportunity. The timing could not be better to hear from our expert guest, Brandon Brown, with Loss Prevention Resumes. Brandon, thanks for joining us today. Can you tell me a little bit more about how you decided to leave the safety and security of a job and branch out on your own to help others with their own careers?
It's a pleasure to be here, Scott. Thank you for having me. Absolutely. I think, like many before me on the podcast, I didn't set out to have a career in loss prevention. I was actually in school to pursue a law enforcement career, but was quickly exposed to loss prevention and all the different avenues it could take me down. Fell in love with it. Was fortunate enough to be exposed to some great leaders and great organizations that allowed me to apply my craft in different arenas across the retail, restaurant, distribution, and financial sectors. I think when you talk about what set me on the path for what I do today, it's probably a combination of a realization that I had early on in my career and later a frustration. The realization being when I entered the loss prevention space, I quickly recognized that I enjoyed one component of the job more than anything else, and that was teaching and educating. I realized that in order to have an effective loss prevention or corporate security program, it really needs to become a culture within the organization, and to get that buy-in across the board, whether it's to an employee base that you're training and educating, whether you're trying to pitch an idea to a business partner or sell your message to the rest of the organization, you have to have the ability to communicate effectively and strategically. And that's the piece of the job that I enjoyed the most. I was afforded the opportunity by some great mentors to dive a little deeper into understanding those messages and creating them, creating loss prevention and training and awareness programs for the entire organization, security operating procedures and communications. And I found that the more care and strategy that I applied to those communications, the better my results were. So I was able to partner with different people throughout the organization, marketing professionals included. And I quickly discovered that there is a lot more to crafting persuasive communications that is on the surface. There are formulas and strategies for doing so, and that really crossed with my passion of writing. I'm a lover of language, and those two things found themselves, and I took off with it. And I was able to create some very impactful security communications, training and awareness programs, and that drove the results that I saw. So I think that was the realization that I had first, that influential communication is so powerful, and was really the first step in preparing me for what I do today. I was able to dive really deep into understanding the formulas and strategies that even marketers use today. And it goes hand in hand when you're trying to inform, engage, motivate, and influence an audience. So it was very important for me to understand who my audience was in the organization, the behaviors we were trying to influence and motivate. And it was a perfect marriage. So I think that was the first realization of put me on the trajectory that I'm on today. The second thing would be a frustration. Later on in my career, I entered the job market as a result of a corporate restructuring, and that experience was frustrating, as most people can relate to. I quickly realized during that time that the deck is really stacked against the job seeker in many ways. We have some organizations that employ very cumbersome and clunky applicant tracking systems in their recruiting process. You have overly lengthy processes, and it's a very, for those that have been in that situation or are currently, it's a very frustrating experience. And so I took the time then to understand, okay, how can I swing the pendulum in my favor? And what can I do to give myself an edge in the job market? And that started with a deeper understanding of how those applicant tracking systems operate, a little bit deeper on the recruiting model, and really diving deep into resume writing and resume optimization. And what I found was there are a lot of similarities between resume writing strategies and persuasive communications. After all, a resume is a marketing document. So the same formulas and strategies that I would use to create and engage, create material to engage an audience were the same formulas and strategies that are used in modern day resume writing. So I had an opportunity to study that deeper and really understand it and apply it to my own situation first, just out of frustration. So I think those two things, that realization early on that persuasive communication is a cornerstone of any effective loss prevention or corporate security program, and that I can influence behavior and engage and motivate using it, coupled with that frustration of my own experience, is what set me on the path I'm on today.
Awesome story. I often hear people, they'll be speaking with me, and although I have a fancy title with my day job, it boils down to I'm in sales. I consider myself a sales expert. And I'll talk to a lot of people and they'll say, oh, there's no way I could do sales. There's no way I could take that type of role because it's just not me. The reality is, regardless of what role you're in, you should be a salesperson. You should be selling yourself. You should be able to persuade others why they need you working in their organization. And so that's something I would put out to everyone is, just as you said with persuasive writing, we are all in sales. It just comes down to what are you persuading on any given day.
Absolutely.
I want to bounce to one thing. You are a professional writer. You are a very well-known writer in our industry and in our space with a lot of the different publications. How did you go down that path to begin writing for the various publications within our industry?
Sure. I think, throughout my career, I had been influenced by some fantastic law prevention leaders. And along the way, I was given a lot of freedom to create. During that process, I was encouraged to share my ideas, share the content, share the unique perspectives that I have. And it was a passion of mine. I wanted to do that. When I first began that, I didn't really have the platform I have today to be able to share those things. And I wasn't doing it for the benefit of or any other reason other than just to express the things that were in my own mind. I had an opportunity as I was creating a lot of these awareness and training materials to dive really deep, as I mentioned, into the marketing copywriting space. So I stepped away as a consultant and was able to create a lot of those programs and communications for business owners and executives, and also go into the loss prevention and security solution provider space and create marketing copy there as well. So I had outlets. I had a lot of things, both professionally that I was writing and on a personal level that I just um, felt was worth commenting on. And what I kept coming back to was the personal branding piece, marketing yourself effectively in our space, and that's what I chose to write about. So I think that my own passions and study and experiences that I was afforded really blended perfectly to get me where I am today.
Back when you were in school, were you a great writer, or did you love writing, or is this something that developed in your adult life?
I have always loved it. It's always been my language. It's my chosen medium. It's something that I've done for as long as I can remember. So as a student of it, I mean, I'm always learning and trying to grow and look at other styles from other professionals and writers. So as far as I can remember, it's something that I've always enjoyed and always been a part of.
The thing I love about the story is you found yourself in a particular space, loss prevention, but you were still working a passion point that you had. And I think that's just a critical aspect of our humanity and our happiness within our humanity, of finding a way to merge our passions in our work. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I don't know what my career would have looked like or where I would have ended up if I wasn't afforded the opportunity to explore that by some of the leaders that I had. I think that that was the for me the most pleasing aspect of the job. And I know we all have what we attract to and what we're good at as far as the task oriented parts of our profession. But I loved the teaching and educating. And I thought, I can use my preferred medium, dive a little bit deeper on the strategies to engage and connect with people, to sell my message to the organization and make a difference. So absolutely, I was very fortunate to be able to identify that early on in my career, and B, be afforded the opportunity to marry a passion with my job.
Yeah, I've kind of learned in my years of experience. I started out in my work career kind of afraid of what the organization might think about my own ideas or my own thoughts, or doing something a little outside the box. And what I've come to learn is typically they're excited for you to develop your own voice. It's actually marketing for that organization as well. And so, an encouragement to everyone is find that voice and put yourself out there.
Absolutely, and I think that's a huge component, the component of personal branding, is to be yourself, be authentic, and really know that we all have those fears and insecurities of putting ourselves out there. But that's really the only way we can learn from one another is if we do. So it does a lot of things. You're able to develop your network. You can become a thought leader. It shows credibility and trust in the fact that you're willing to be vulnerable and put yourself out there. I think that's a huge component of personal branding, but it's difficult for some people, and I understand that it's a different perspective, especially if there's not a comfort level with it. But we all have something to contribute, whether that be to your organization or the world in general. We all have a unique perspective, experience, thoughts, and ideas. And I mean, what is the first thing that we do as loss prevention or corporate security professionals? We run up against a problem. We want to see how our colleagues have addressed that same problem. We're not necessarily reinventing the wheel, so we know that there's got to be a solution for this out here. How have my colleagues handled this? We wouldn't know the answers to that if people didn't share, and I think that's a big component of being able to develop and highlight your personal brand is being willing to share.
Yeah, most of us are a little more negative on ourselves. We see ourselves in the negative light. And I know there's a listener that's going to go pull up this stat, and my numbers are incorrect because I don't have it in front of me. But for example, I've read multiple times that the average human has like 10,000 thoughts a day. And again, that number is probably incorrect. 80 to 85% of those thoughts are negative. And so what we always have to battle is the negative thoughts we have, typically even about ourselves, and realize that the others, that really don't actually know us, if you put yourself out there, they perceive you as being knowledgeable and an expert. So the key is just to remember how others are perceiving you and not how you perceive yourself, because it's most likely in a negative light.
Right. Well, and I think a lot of it is people doubt themselves. And for example, I was having a conversation with an industry professional that was relatively new to the industry, 2 or 3 years, and I recommended that he put his thoughts and ideas out there on whatever is his preferred platform or medium. And the pushback is, well, I don't have anything to contribute. I'm new to the industry. People aren't going to take me seriously. But I completely disagree with that, because even if you're documenting your process of learning, if you're learning a new trade and you're documenting your process, or you're sharing your ideas with a perspective that you have, that's powerful, because you're also able to help others in their same journey. So I don't think it matters, what level or what stage you're at in your career. Everybody has something that they can contribute to the industry, and put their ideas, thoughts, and perspectives out there. And I think that's really how we grow as an industry. So not only are you helping your own brand, but you're helping the industry as a whole.
You really segued for the next question perfectly. Before I dive into that, I just want the listeners to know you can contact Brandon Brown directly on LinkedIn or at his website, which is losspreventionresumes.com. As you gain value from this particular episode, don't just stop here. Take it to the next level. Reach out to Brandon and let him help you if you tend to be one of those people that right now are in a search. Now, Brandon, can you kind of walk me through the process of what it looks like when I reach you? What do you do with someone who reaches out to you to help them find the next step in their career? And maybe if you could add, what are the biggest issues most face, or where can most of us use the most improvement?
Sure. I think when someone contacts me, I try to spend as much time as I can understanding their needs and goals. I think it's important to listen to where they are, particularly in their career, and where they're trying to go. Are they interested in a different career space altogether? Are they trying to move into or out of the industry? Are they trying to advance their career in the organization that they're at now? Or are they trying to go somewhere else? So it helps me to understand that context, to really understand them, and assess their needs first and foremost. So I try to dive really deep to see, let's take a look at you as a brand, and how are you perceived? What are you highlighting about yourself? And provide resources and strategies first. I got into this to truly help others and be a resource, and that's my first priority. So I think I can't really effectively do my job if I don't have a deep understanding of who the person is and where they're trying to go. I think the pitfalls that many face, or mistakes that many face, are first and foremost what we talked about before, not being comfortable developing their brand and putting it out there. And second, I would say in terms of resumes, it's just not understanding or having a deep understanding of what they're up against in terms of applicant tracking systems and how to effectively sell themselves and influence the action of a human. There's really two components to resumes. We're trying to get past the gatekeeper systems, and then when we do, it needs to still influence that person to reach out and contact you. So those two components are big. And when you're writing your resume, it's difficult to step outside yourself and look at, okay, how do I want to position myself? I tell people that it's important before you write a word to really create a narrative for your resume. What do you want people to take away when they're done reading the document? And spend a lot of time thinking about not necessarily where you've been, or what you've achieved. And yes, that is an important component of an effective resume. But also spend the time on where do you want to be? Where do you want to go? What are you trying to achieve for your next step? And incorporate those things in when you craft your resume.
Brandon, can you kind of walk me down the path? We talked about all the different brick and mortar locations that are closing, especially in the world of retail right now. Too many of our peers are looking for new opportunities. Too often, all we know to do is put together our resume, submit it to the online source, and hope for the best. Can you walk me through how to beat this process a little bit? How can I set myself up to have a little more success?
Sure. I think there's two components to that, and I'll start with the resume first. I think it's important to take an active role in developing your brand, and really that's what personal branding is to me. It's how the world sees you. It's a promise of value. It's presenting your unique value proposition, the traits, characteristics, personality, and perspective that you bring to the table. But taking time to develop that is important. And I think personal branding really is taking an active role in your career and not waiting for an organization to choose you. And that starts with putting yourself out there, creating platforms. I read that Google is the new resume, and I agree with that. Content is king, and when I Google your name, what comes up? What perception is out there, and if it's nothing, I think that's a problem too. So we all have something to contribute, like I mentioned. I think it's being comfortable with putting those ideas in perspective, your perspective out there. We're in a time of instant access to information, and there's so many tools at our disposal, some that are completely free, whether we're talking about blogging, having your own personal website, marrying the two. I think that's a powerful and underutilized tool is having a personal website, a resume website, and blogging from it. Share your perspectives on your career. We each have something about the job that we're passionate about. And I'm willing to bet that there's other professionals out there that can take away a lot from your thoughts. But that does a couple things. It's starting to create your own brand organically, and it's helping you with visibility in search engine rankings. So being able to create content, and it doesn't necessarily need to be in written form. If you like taking videos, most of us walk around with video cameras in our pocket. It could be social media, if that's your preferred platform, but putting yourself out there to take an active role in the job search process and not doing what the masses are doing in approaching job seeking. There's a quote by author and angel investor Tim Ferriss, and he says, "The fishing is best where the fewest go, and the collective insecurity of the world makes it easy for people to hit home runs while everyone else is aiming for base hits." And I think that's powerful. I think that if the game plan is to apply for positions online and then wait, that will greatly diminish your success. I think it's important to look at other ways to attract eyeballs to your brand and creating content and being authentic and being yourself and sharing your knowledge with the world is a way to do that. In terms of a resume, it's understanding those two. It's okay. There's hundreds, sometimes thousands of resumes submitted for a position. What things can I do to stack the deck in my favor? And a lot of that comes down to applicant tracking system, understanding how they work and how you can optimize the resume to get past them. I think it's 75% of resumes never make it through those resume filtering systems. So that was a motivating factor for me to start what I'm doing now, in that you see so many talented and qualified professionals that never get an opportunity to compete for a position simply based on the process that organizations are using. So it's also taking the time to dig a little deeper into the resume, not just focusing on the content that you want to include and the things you want to communicate, but how do you optimize that document to get past those systems? Optimizing for keywords. Keywords is a big component. I tell people to write your resume naturally and then go back through it and incorporate keywords from the job description that you're targeting. Those applicant tracking systems are designed to look for relevant keywords in your resume, and they're comparing them against the job description. So spend some time, and there's free resources out there. You can use a word cloud tool online and copy and paste the job description into the word cloud tool and check the keywords for frequency and identify the relevant keywords, and then use them organically in your resume. Obviously, they need to align still with your experience and skills, but again, it's understanding that there's more to this game, and I'll call it a game because that's really how it's set up, than just simply here's me on paper and apply to the job. We still need to be very strategic about how you're applying and what you're including on your resume.
Brandon, I have to ask, this is a personal belief of mine. I guess I'm seeking your either confirmation or other ideas you might have. I personally am not a fan of getting a job through an online resume process. Very grateful and thankful to have, at this point, a large network that I can reach out to if I ever find myself looking for another role. I tend to have my greatest success using my network. How key is the network to finding the next roles within your career?
Absolutely huge. I think that's one of the cornerstones of personal branding is really building and nurturing your professional network. I see a lot of people that want to reach out to their network when they need something, when they're in the throes of the job hunt. But it's important to nurture that network that you have built before you need it. It's that principle of reciprocity. Share your ideas, make connections with people, give your expertise and advice, help when you can, and people will be more likely to do so when you need it. That's a huge component, and I agree with you. I think that using your network can be much more fruitful, I'll say, when it comes to looking for a job than simply using an online portal to do so. There's ways to build it. I think you can build your network and nurture your network and use that as a tool to continue to develop your personal brand. There's a book by Ryan Holiday. It's titled "Ego is the Enemy," and in it he discusses MMA fighter and coach Frank Shamrock, and how Frank Shamrock's approach to training his fighters is unique in that he uses a plus minus equal formula for developing his fighters. The plus being that he encourages his fighters to identify another fighter who has better skills than they do, to be a mentor to them and give them a goal to aim for. The minus in that they identify a fighter whom they can teach and be a mentor to, and that changes the perspective of what they're learning when they have to teach it, and they're also giving back. And then the equal being a fighter with similar skills at the same level with whom they can compete with. I think that formula works perfectly for professional networking because you're getting constant feedback from every angle. You're building your network, so you're seeking out people that can mentor you. You can be a mentor too, and people that are at the same skill level or stage in their career that you are to gauge yourself against. So it's that constant feedback loop from every angle that makes that powerful, and it will also give you feedback for how your brand is perceived. and where you are from each perspective. So I think that's a very powerful tool. And the advice I would give to people is spend more time actively engaging with, and developing your network than doing anything else when it comes to the job search.
For me, I have to remember that it's about the long game. We tend to get impatient. We want to make a change now. We want to shift now. The reality is, our working career is typically 40, 45 years, some cases 50 years of work. That is a long time to build a very large network of people that can pull you and push you into new opportunities and new roles. So my encouragement to all listeners is just remember it's a long game, not a short game. I want to bounce back to one other aspect. You were talking about in the personal branding, blogging and creating a space and putting content out there. And some might say, well, I don't know enough about the industry. And you said that you talked to them about just putting your day-to-day story out there. And I think that's important. Again, as a sales expert, one of the things I would say is people tend to do business with people they trust. So there's the relatable aspect of that. And also, probably the number one tool in anybody's sales toolbox is a story. The story of who you are, the story of what makes you great. And so I love what you said there, because if someone is putting their story out in a blog or a vlog through video or website, whatever you choose, it doesn't have to be all industry focused. It can just be their story of life, story of being a professional, so that those hiring managers who may be searching, they can relate. Do you agree with that?
I do. I think it's important for talent seekers to see how you create, how you think, how you engage, how you approach a problem. There's a strategy or a formula rather, that I encourage people to use when they're writing their resume, that they can use when they're building content or they're building their online brand. And that's the CAR formula, CAR, C for challenge, A for action, R for result. You can use that to tell great stories. And as you just mentioned, stories sell. And if you're trying to sell your brand, it's a very powerful formula to use. What challenges have you experienced professionally? What actions did you take to overcome the challenge, and what was the result? And I think when people get lost with, well, what will people be interested in that I have to contribute? As you said, it's not always the professional piece or the task-oriented part of your job, but maybe you have a unique perspective on how to overcome one of those challenges. Maybe it's just you documenting the process of you learning. You started a new position, or you have a few years on the job and you're just documenting your process. So whatever that looks like to you, and that it might be different, whether your platform is LinkedIn or it's a industry publication, trade association publication, or an industry magazine, or your own website. I think it's important to be able to put that content out and let talent seekers see how you think and create and engage.
Brandon, the bad news is that this episode has to come to a close. We have run out of time. The good news is that you are willing to dive in a little deeper on what a resume should actually look like, and even how to design a LinkedIn profile that actually works and gets attention from others. So for now, we're going to call this episode complete, and we'll see everyone next week at Security Pro Insights. Hey, Security Pro Insight listeners. Thanks for listening to this episode with our special guest, Brandon Brown. I want to make you aware of a special offer that is exclusive only to our listeners. It is a 15% off resume writing services with Brandon Brown. Just go to securityproinsights.com/LPI P-resume. This will give you the opportunity to sign up for our email list so you can always be aware of updates. And when you sign up, you will receive a special code for the 15% off to be used with Brandon Brown. I hope this is an offer you can take advantage of. Until next week, happy day.